Good evening. Students and faculty, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Visions and Voices sponsored forum, Cross-Urban Creativity, as a university-wide initiative to inactivate and integrate the USC campus through art and humanities. Visions and Voices, as the name acclaimed, has brought so many visions and voices on campus whose impact will range long, regardless of your field of studies. On behalf of the University Vision Voices organization, I thank you for your loyal participation. And also on behalf of students and faculty, I thank the university for its continuous commitment to the art and humanities. Today, we will focus on the very subject of urbanism. This is not a new subject, but as this year marked the threshold of which half of the world population, more than half the world population, now moves in cities, of which many of them do not grow in the cities where they live, and many of them lives more than one city. That fact brings the subject in a new urgency, a new meaning. The event will be made of representations from 4 cities. That is the reason it's called cross-urban creativity. The idea behind it is that if we think in the bacteriology, a bacteria in one biological body might well be turned into antibiotics in another biological body. And in marine biology, we all know the phenomenon of pearl that is created by parasites, which actually intruded in the otherwise homogeneous substance of an organic body. And then also in the cultural background where I am from, we always say, stone from another mountain can be turned into jade. Well, for the future, we expect the city we live and we design and manage should be a creative way in which each citizen of those cities is not only treated as urban economic ingredients, moving pixels of what we call parametric models. We must be dignified and enjoy the places we live, and all those qualities exist and in sometimes in contrast in their different ways throughout different cities. Tonight we brought planners, important planners from city of LA, Mexico City, Shanghai and London. Each of the cities carries a long tradition of urban planning and practice and always renew its vitality through new creativity. With this being said, I want to introduce tonight's moderator, Scott Lash. Scott Lash is a professor and the director of Center for Cultural Studies in Goldsmith College, University of London. He has written many books and claimed great reputation in the field of economic, political studies of science and spaces, particularly in the postmodern urbanism that's marked by information and trade and many other issues. And he has taught and lectured at Harvard University, Yale, Columbia, and many other well-reputed institutions. And his recent book, or the new book he's working, is called China Constructing Capitalism, which will appear in 2011. And with this, let's welcome Scott Lash.
Can't see you out there at all. Right, thank you, Qingyun, for this wonderful invite. If I can thank Qingyun on the part of all of us from Shanghai, London, Mexico City, course, LA, for this invite, and also to the provost, Max Nikias, who's done such amazing things at USC for the last 10 years, I guess, or so. Let me say a couple of words about these this cross-urban creativity, and then very quickly introduce our four panelists. I mean, I think we've got four cities here: Shanghai, London, Mexico City, and LA. And two of these cities, you know, I think we're living through an incredible economic crisis, right? State of California, right? LA, fiscal crisis. United States government, plus, you know, Britain and all these other countries, same kind of fiscal crisis. This is a crisis really of a certain kind of urbanism, right? And a certain kind of economy that might have begun in 1979, 1980 with Thatcher and Reagan, right? That people call neoliberalism. And there's a crisis of this neoliberal, completely kind of totally free enterprise, no state, no public sector, right? Type regime that have went badly into crisis with a financial crisis in 2008, 2009. At the same time, you have and low growth, recession in the so-called advanced countries like the US, UK, etc. At the same time, you know, you've got this rapid globalization and super growth of so-called emerging countries like China and Mexico, you know, growing at a much faster pace, developing a really dynamic urbanism, right? So, I mean, the kind of question we have to ask ourselves is how do mature cities like LA and London, you know, which, you know, if you were LA, you were Los Angeles and people were attracted, or you were London and everybody wanted to come, but it's not like that anymore. These kind of mature global cities are in great danger of some kind of burnout. We have to think about how can we restructure, how can we rethink urbanism in you know, after 2010 and after the crisis. At the same time, you've got this huge dynamic, almost out of control development of Delhi and Bombay and Lagos and Shanghai and Mexico City, where they're taking almost a certain kind of lead. So I think in this kind of cross-urban creativity, and of course in those cities, especially say Shanghai, there's a much stronger public sector, yeah? A much stronger publicly, not just straight neoliberalism. This is a tremendous opportunity, I think, for planning and for the public and public space in the West. Yeah. And I think that, you know, that both sides here come on having a hell of a lot from each other in this kind of cross-urban creativity. Now, I think, you know, everybody's going to address this in their own way. We're going to put some of these kind of questions on the floor for the exchange between you and us and between the panelists. So let me say a quick word about the panelists. We're going to start with Shanghai, where the panelist is Wu Jiang, who used to be Professor Wu Jiang. He was Deputy Director of Planning for the whole of Shanghai until very recently. He is Professor and Vice President of Tongji University, the very distinguished architecture department, one of the very best in China, for several years now. He's going to be the first speaker. The second speaker is Richard Cohen from London. Richard is the head of planning and strategic development for the London Development Association. And Richard kind of characteristically puts in not just a planning solution, but at the same time you've got a transport solution and an economic solution at the same time. We have to understand all these things at the same time. Third speaker is Daniel Escoto Sanchez, who is Director of Public Space Authority of Mexico City government. And Daniel Escoto was responsible and heavily involved in the enormous city development of UNAM, University National of Mexico, which is an incredible, almost university city that I think a lot of us can learn from, and has done work in Barcelona as well as Mexico City. And the fourth speaker is someone who you all know and hold, I'm sure, very dear, and that's Gail Goldberg, who's the head of planning for Los Angeles, and we're very, very honored to have Gail here. Gail introduced the high-density solution in San Diego, very famous for that. Over a long period of time, she ran San Diego planning. And she's thinking of all sorts of transport and public and density solutions for LA right now. So without any further ado, hopefully all our speakers can now take the stage, and our first speaker will be Jiang Wu from Shanghai. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dean Park. Thank you, Scott. Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. I think for all of us, it's very difficult to figure out a general perspective of such big city like Shanghai in 15 minutes. I really hope there will be no problem with the computer. I do believe that for all the cities, the most significant character of a city should come from its history, tradition, and culture. Shanghai has also its very special history and culture. That's why my slides are starting from this. Actually, Shanghai, as most people understand, is a young city, but actually Shanghai was a very old city. As a city, she already has more than 700 years history. But of course, it was a very small city, and it was a not important city compared with the other Chinese capital cities. The most special, significant character of Shanghai history is from this. You can look at this map. Normally, in Chinese ancient city, the city has a city wall, and the shape of the city normally is a square, but Shanghai is a round shape. And normally in the Chinese ancient cities, there should be axes, normally south, east, and the east-west and north-south axis. But in Shanghai, there is no axis. And along the axis, there should be a very important building, like the government building or the Confucius temple, so on. But in Shanghai, the most important building is not that. I will show you later. And these two pictures show you that about 200 years ago, Shanghai. What we should read from this picture is, normally in Chinese ancient cities, inside of the city is very different from outside cities. The inside means the urbanized area. Outside means rural. But these two pictures show you the outside of the city of Shanghai even more busy than inside the city. That's very important. Why? Because this city comes from the trade. And trade is from the river. And river is outside of the city. So this is a very important character of the city. And you can see this building used to be the most important building of Shanghai instead of government building or Confucius temple. Although there was Confucius temple and government building. This was a tea house. Why tea house became the most important building? It's for trading, for business people. This is why Shanghai has been always supposed the most commercial city of China. It's a tradition. More than 700 years tradition. Of course, 150 years and 160 years ago, the war between the Western people and Chinese government. After the war, China was forced to be opened to the world. And Shanghai was supposed to be the first open treaty port in China. And of course, the urban development has been totally changed the direction from the traditional Chinese way to more or less Western way. That's the first generation buildings architecture in Shanghai. We call it colonial buildings. This is a map show you the colonial development starting from 150 years ago. We call it settlement or concession of Shanghai. The interesting thing is this part, this round shape, was the ancient Chinese city of Shanghai. And all the colonial parts is developed on the besides of the ancient Chinese city. Even now, probably Shanghai is the only Chinese city with a Chinatown. This is the Shanghai Chinatown. And of course, after the opening, the direction of development changed. So here, outside of the city, traditional Chinese city, become the new center of Shanghai. It's called Bang. Bang is the center of Shanghai. This photo took in the beginning of last century, last century. And you can see, after that, Shanghai has been a very quick, faster urban development from middle of the 19th centuries to the middle of the 20th centuries. And all this architecture, I don't have enough time to show you piece by piece, but just give you a general impression of Shanghai architectural development. It's totally changed to a Western style from Chinese traditional architecture. And this is about in 1920s and 30s. And all this Western architecture was imported to Shanghai. And not only architectural style, but also new building technology and a new idea of the modern urban development. So you can see the building become taller and taller. Means not only the modern structure, modern technology has advanced, and the land become more and more marketed. So the land becomes more expensive, so building has to be taller and taller. And there are also lots of the modern architects, or the architects in terms of the Western term, because in ancient China we don't have the Western meaning architect's profession. But after that, the Chinese architects, of course, first generation of Chinese architects was Western people, has been built a lot of the Western style buildings in Shanghai. For instance, this is the HSBC headquarters in Shanghai, 1925. This is the original rendering we found in the archive. And you can see the building also developed, just follow the European movement. See, in a very short time, the building, the architecture itself has a lot of change from very ancient, very classical to modern. And not only European architects, but also local Chinese architects, first generation of them, has been already grown up. We can say the first generation of Chinese architects, most of them were sent to study abroad by the Chinese government. This is one of them. And they have been played very active and a very important role of the Chinese early architectural history in the 20th century. Fortunately, my grandfather was also one of them. All this architecture designed by the Chinese local architects means the Western educated. And most of them were educated in the United States instead of Europe. That's because the Chinese government sent them to the United States. And most of them we sent to one university, is the University of Pennsylvania in Philadelphia. And of course, they introduced a lot of the modern ideas of architecture to Shanghai. And some of them starting to think about how to combine the new, advanced Western architecture to Chinese tradition. And this is one of them, also graduated from University of Pennsylvania. He made the first master planning of Chinese city in Shanghai in the end of 1920s. This was the first master planning of city. And he tried to introduce new planning concepts, like mostly from Washington, D.C., use several axes to figure out the new Shanghai. He supposed, because that time in 1925, Shanghai has been already supposed to be a very important westernized settlement, the European settlement. But he tried to plan a new Shanghai just on the north of the old Shanghai, tried to make a new Chinese Shanghai to compete with the Western colonial part. And this is supposed to be a center of the city. Unfortunately, they have built only a few buildings in this new capital, but because after a few years, the anti-Japanese war happened, and this part was the first occupation, Japanese occupation, and never been the center of a new city. Although few of the buildings have been built. Well, after the anti-Japanese war, sorry, this is too many. And after the Japanese War is the Civil Chinese War, and after the war is the Communist Revolution, and then the Shanghai, as well as the other cities of China, has been totally changed the development direction. The new direction comes back to the, we call that so-called urbanization movement, is in the end of 1970s again. We call it opening again. That happened in the end of 1970s to the 1980s. So the most significant issue of the new urbanization is the new Pudong area development. It's starting from early 1990s. Originally, all the Shanghai development along the river of the east of the river, we call it Puxi. Puxi means east of the river. And the west of the river, totally empty. And then this became a new engine of the new urbanization movement. We built the bridge, and then you can see the very fast development. This picture took within 10 years. You can see the 10 years change. Of course, you can see even 2 or 3 years change. Now, we have just finished one of the tallest building, this one, in last year, and then the taller one has been starting built. This one, designed by an architecture firm in Los Angeles, RTKL. This one designed by also American architects, KPF. And this one, American architects too, as well. So all this tallest building designed by American. So, well, the point is who designed, but how do we plan the city? Everybody have the impression, if you have a chance to visit Shanghai, you will feel Shanghai is so active, or we change a different term, is so out of control. But actually, Shanghai's development, fast development, is under the control. We have the master planning in Shanghai. Normally, every 15 years, we revise again. This one is made in the beginning of the 2000. And we suppose again Shanghai is not, because Shanghai now is one of the largest cities in China as well as the world, 20 million population. It's impossible to imagine 20 million people in just one city. So we prefer to suppose the whole Shanghai administrative area as a group of cities instead of just one city. So the concept of the planning is we suppose Shanghai has a central city as well as several satellite towns, cities. Well, when we say satellite cities means with about 1 million population. And then the most important idea of this planning, first, of course, is a strategical structure. I mean, the spatial structure. And the ecological consideration. Because how should we plan a city with so fast speed, with so large a scale, but still keep the ecological consideration? You can see, first of all, as the development, of course, the infrastructure development is the most important input of the metropolis government. We cost lots of money to build these infrastructures to make this very fast development city running well. The most important infrastructure building is the subway system, because Shanghai is very tight in terms of the land. The land is not enough. The population is growing up very fast. Every year, averagely, we have 300,000 people more in Shanghai. Although the natural rate of the birth is negative now, but the neighbors, new people from outside of Shanghai, every year is more and more. And so the only possible way to serve the circulation of the city is the public transportation system. And the only way to build up the public transportation system is the subway, because we don't have enough ground land. And then, of course, the environment and the cultural facilities. And although most people suppose Shanghai is a young city in China, but has also very rich history. So how about the historical preservation? We also have done a lot to try to preserve its rich history. A lot of buildings has been listed as preservative historical buildings. And we have also done a very detailed control guidelines, all the blocks within the historical areas. Although we have destroyed too much in the first 10 years of the opening. But from the beginning of 1990s, we started this work, try to preserve as more as possible. And we do believe the history, culture, or tradition is not only so important as the history itself, but how to continue this, how to continue the traditional city, how to reuse, keep the tradition, keep the city always running up with its rich history. That's why this is one of the examples I try to give you this evening, is how to reuse, because Shanghai was a very important industrial base of China. More than 60% of the traditional industry in Shanghai in 100 years ago, until 50 years ago. But now, all this industry, most of the industry, has been transferred to new. And how to reuse these old industrial areas and buildings. And that's a lot of people are talking about the so-called reuse industry as a creative industries. This is a very typical photo to show you what's the former industry and the later new usage. And a lot of the old buildings, just 2 minutes, 1 minute, used by the new function, mostly a creative artist or the other design new industries within old factory houses. This one used to be a steel house, steel factory, but now used as a very well-done public art space. And this is a very interesting building. It's an older slaughter building, but now used as a very popular artist area. And lots of these factory buildings, industrial buildings, has been successfully transferred to a new creative industry. Now in Shanghai, we have more than 80 pieces of factories or areas, former industrial areas, successfully transferred to a new creative areas. I just took a few examples. And one of the most important projects in Shanghai is try to give back the most active public space again to the people, because in the past 20 years, follow the economic development, the transportation become heavier and heavier, and how to make back again the public space to the people instead of just having transportation. This is a very important elevated road in a very important area of Shanghai. But from last year, the government decided to dig it buried underground and make this space again to the public. Now it's almost finished. Yes. Then this year, from the May, we will have the World Expo. So if you have a chance, you can see by yourself, particularly during the Expo time. Just seconds. I just because I believe that during Expo, there are too many pavilions and buildings are very attractive to all the people. I just try to, well, I don't want to tell you which one is which one, but the title, the slogan of the Expo is a better city, better life. I think it is also what all of us want to do. Thank you very much.
I'm a PC. Kay, can you help me? These young cities have a lot to say for themselves, don't they?
I'm actually not the best person to do it. All right.
Good evening. This is my London. It's about 36 miles across at its longest axis, and 8 million people live there. In the time allowed, very selfish I can say, but I'll try to keep to my 15 minutes. I'm taking my watch off at this very moment to check the time. What I wanted to talk to you about was something about the governance of London, because that has changed in the last 10 years, and what that means in terms of the opportunity to plan for growth. And then to talk, I think, about growth and change, both in what we know is going to happen and how we plan for that, but also, and that comes in terms of transport, which I want to talk about a little, but also the opportunity to grab opportunity when it arises. And for that, I'd like to have a word about eastward growth and the 2012 Olympics. So the big plan for London. For the first time in London's history, we are trying to bring together three main plans in a simultaneous trajectory of implementation, consultation, writing, and that's going on this very moment in time. We have only in the last 10 years had a mayor with powers for London, and prior to that, London was run in effect by 33 separate local authorities. Now they still exist, but we now have an elected mayor over the top of those, and his job is at the London-wide level to direct at a high level both the land use and housing which emerges in the London spatial plan, the transport infrastructure and operation for London which emerges in the transport plan, and where I particularly work in terms of the economic development, the business and employment offer of London. And we're bringing those three plans together. And the idea is that under those plans we will then be able to achieve particular projects and manage in a sustainable way growth in London. These are the projections going forward to 2031. We have an extensive evidence base of our planning process to give you a sense of where employment growth is going to happen. What you see there, the darkest blue, is in the centre and mainly in the east. And I want you to think about the east and concentrate on the east of London, because that's where growth is happening in London, and that's where we're allowing growth and encouraging growth. Similarly with population growth to 2031, again, outside of that blank space in the centre, which is in effect the West End and financial district, where there is very low levels of resident population, growth, the darkest red, is happening eastwards in London. And for the city as a whole, that's where we see growth happening and growth being accommodated in a sustainable way. By 2021, we will have an increase in population of 650,000 on the existing 8 million. And that is the size of a fairly large city in England. So it gives you a sense of the scale of what we anticipate. And this is well evidenced and researched and following a continuing growth trend. And I say the plan for London, if you look closely at this map, this is the key diagram from our planning. It's conceptual in many ways, but it also gets to the kernel of some of the key areas and locations in London. But I point you again towards the Thames Gateway in particular, where growth is happening. Transport. From my discussions with colleagues before this event, I have a sense that I may have difficulty persuading some of the residents of Los Angeles to give up their cars. We'll see. These are the goals of London Transport. I mentioned by 2031 our population is forecast to grow by 1.3 million people on the existing 8 billion. That's a huge increase to accommodate within a short space of time. And what we aim to do is use transport not purely to move people, though that is the core of the job, and to move goods, but actually to be exploited in terms of economic development and regeneration, improve quality of life and safety, reduce transport's contribution to climate change and carbon dioxide as well. There's a significant range of planning aspirations. Now, we've had 10 years under an elected mayor of reshaping London's transport, and we now have an integrated authority. And what we seek and what we're achieving is modal shift from car to public transport. And so far, we've achieved 5%. Now, that's particularly evident in the centre of London, which is the most congested part. Movement around the suburbs is still quite car-driven, and that won't change overnight. I'll also mention further on the Oyster card and cycling, as well as some of the innovations we're introducing. The congestion charge. This was introduced in about 8 years ago. It was the mayor's big election point. The aim of that is that everybody who drives into that red dotted lined area pays now £8, $10, $11 a day to drive their vehicle, whatever that vehicle may be. Exemptions are electric and disabled and little else. And motorbikes go for free as well, but cars that don't fit those categories pay £8 a day. Now, the other, to the west there, you see the zigzagged shaded area, was to be an extension of the congestion charge. But if we have our problems in terms of persuading people to give up their cars, and that's been shelved for the moment. But the main congestion charge there, and the other side of this is, it produces £50 million a year in clear investment funding, which goes back into improving the public transport infrastructure of London. So you see, there's a win-win here in the reduction of car usage and the generation of income. The Oyster card. Everybody now in London who travels by public transport has an Oyster card. It's the symbol of the integrated transport system that we have. And we've just brought rail networks into it. We've just brought even the river ferry services on the Thames. If you travel to London as a visitor, the first thing you should do is buy yourselves an Oyster card. They only cost £3, and they mean that you get half price on every journey you make compared to buying individual tickets. This year we're going to introduce a cycle hire scheme. We're copying the Parisians, the Veiling scheme. Our current mayor is a cyclist himself and is very keen that London adopts a much improved approach to cycling. So there are going to be 6,000 bicycles for free hire and 10,200 docking stations. You pay a deposit. If you bring it back in one piece, you get the deposit back. When you say that, but actually, places like Paris have a significant problem. If you go on YouTube, the Parisian system called a veiling, and type in extreme veiling, you'll find out what the youth of Paris are doing with those bicycles, and it's not good. So watch this space, and we'll see how our cycle hire scheme survives. And these, just to encourage people to cycle into and out of London using commuting purposes, we're creating a range of cycle superhighways. The two red ones are the first two to be introduced, and they're going to be coming in hopefully this year. And this is the overall objective, modal shift. Between now and 2031, the number of trips per day is going to rise from 24 million to 27 million trips per day in London. What we want to do is reduce the use of car as part of that from 43% to 37% and get people into cycling, walking and using public transport. Otherwise London will grind to a halt. And for a global city, that's the last thing we want. We have a reputation to keep up, we have movement and transport infrastructure and a trust, if you like, from visitors, residents and the business community that London can keep moving. Growing east. A lot of people assume that the east end of London is a long distance away, but the Thames Gateway, which is what we've designated the eastern growth area, begins at Tower Bridge, the most iconic symbol of the city. I cycle over it every day on my way to work. I work in the centre of London. This is close to the centre, this is where East London starts. This is just to give you a sense of where East London is going and how we're trying to encourage a shift of business, of new houses, of density, of new homes growth in the eastward direction. But it's a challenge. If you look at that, it's not a particularly attractive area. A combination of floodplain, of outdated industry and derelict land, much of it poisoned, much of it in need of clearing. So we have a huge challenge ahead of us. But that does not, we do not balk at that challenge, if you like. Growth must happen in London. And just to give you a sense of the variety and diversity of the area, that's just the mix of use and opportunity. Moving from your left to right, we have Canary Wharf in that loop of the Thames there. Moving beyond that, there's Millennium Dome, and the yellow area stretching northwards is the Olympic Park, what's known as the Lower Lee Valley, and I'll come on to that in a minute. And you see as we move further on, the docks, moving into old industrial areas and quite wilderness areas of marsh and floodplain. The Olympics and the Paralympics. I'm not going to talk about the detail of the construction at the moment, or the detail of the venues, if you like, although we're very proud of them. It's about what we can do with the Olympics to bring about regeneration and wider benefit to East London, and as a catalyst for the growth ambitions that we have, which emerge from our overall London plans. A euphoric day, July the 5th, 6th, 2005. I have to say that in front of Hotel de Ville in Paris, the mood wasn't quite the same. And I was looking to go and speak in Paris a couple of months later about the growth in East London, and had to, if you like, refer to the catalytic impact of the Olympics, and it was a hushed audience. To give you a sense of the change of the area around and about where the Olympics is happening, you see from Roman times through to medieval, very small settlements. That is the centre of London. That is now the city of London, the black space there. You see, moving through the 17th century, London itself starts to expand. Through the 18th century, it starts to grow further and south of the river as well. And then the 19th century, it explodes in growth. But if you look to the northeast, you'll see a long blank space there, which is the Lee Valley. And the reason that that's a blank space, and the reason that London's growth leapt over that space, is because it is floodplain. It is a mixture of different waterways that all feed into the Thames, but regularly flooded their banks. So London decided to just leap over it. And you can see through the 20th century, it remains as a blank location. Well, that's where the Olympics are going to happen. And this is a distillation of the street network of East London. And you can see again, this is the Lee Valley, the lower Lee Valley, the valley of the River Lee. And it's what we call a tear in the fabric of London. And London has leapfrogged over that, and it's been left as a strange wilderness, but one that is ill-loved and ill-known by most of London. And to give you a sense, the Olympic Park was sold as an area of dereliction that could be developed on, but actually it's a real mix of industry. There are canal residents living there. There's a great deal of what we call fly tipping, illegal dumping of goods and places. There's a lot of electricity pylons flooding through the area. Just the sense that it's a very intricate area, but an area that is vastly underused and economically unproductive. So it was the likely choice to stage the Olympics, and stage an Olympics that we sold as a regeneration purpose, a purpose to bring new jobs, new life to the east of London. I think LA was the first Olympics that actually made money. Well, this is an Olympics that hopefully will generate income into a wider area. This is the building site as we see it. You can see in the distance the stadium itself, and then to the left you can see the Canary Wharf. So the proximity to the centre of London. Right, well, I'm going to move on very fast again, just another picture of the proximity of the stadium to the rest of London. This gives you a sense that we aim to create 15,000 new jobs, 50,000 new homes and 10,000 new jobs. We want 70,000 new people to move into this area after the Olympics are finished, so that the homes that are created, they're already there, they're going to be used as the athlete accommodation, the stadiums, some will be reduced in size, some will be moved away, a new park will be developed, a new business activity. Closed for the Olympics and then integrated after the Olympics, this is how we see it. You see the boundary around the Olympics, that is actually the security fence that will be around the Olympics during the Games, and then we anticipate it will be moved away. We'll be left with a reduced number of stadia and a big park, a big new park for London with new permeation and new development, so it will no longer be a tear in the fabric of London. And if you see these areas around and about, those are what are called the fringe, and we have master planned each and every one of them to maximise the benefits that will come decade after decade after decade beyond. Again, just another view of the Olympic Park and what a new, it will be a new park for London, a new green space. Town centres in the area will be strengthened and new town centres will be created. So coming to my penultimate slide. Sorry, I apologise for rushing through this. But beyond London, we have a long-term integrated vision, which what that means is that if we have the overall plans for London, then we can plan growth where we know growth is going to happen. But it allows us to grab opportunities as they arise, and the Olympics was one of those opportunities for us. So what we say is, we have an app for that. Thank you.
Hello, good evening. I'm glad to be here representing the government of Mexico City. This is exactly the situation, but I would like to know how to sing or how to dance instead of speaking of architecture, but I have to win. We were talking about city development of the cities and many other items. I would like to talk about the best place for people. Mexico City is also a very ancient city, you know, and for decades we've been lost this space for the people. So what we wanted now is not to look to back. We're doing it, restoring and preserving the city, the core of the city, but now what we have, the problems we have are really in other senses. We have a very big problem of security, a big problem of development in the space, private versus public space. So the government of Mexico City has formed the authority of the public space just to try to do some results that, like the ones you are seeing in the image. This is a typical view of the center of the town, of the main square of Mexico City, where you can see, well, how our public space is very open, and versus this open space, the city. It's true that it's not a very high density, a very high mass city, but it's a very well packed city. So open space is always understood as
a public space. But what we want to do now is to open the space, the private space also, to be a mixture, to make a mixture between public space and private also. So we have very big troubles. We had it. We are fighting to cars, to development of all the people that is coming to the city, and we have I'm going to show you, not in a dramatic way, but I'm going to show you just two of the big problems of the mega city like Mexico City. The first one is that it's a city of 13 million daily population, but from these 13 million, residents are only 8 million people. The other ones came from outer. Most of them are workers, so we have to make a city for 13 million people daily. Another problem is the cars. We have 3.5 million cars, and just until today, 300,000 public transportation vehicles. But these 300,000 transport, the half of the people in the city, and the other 3.5 million just make the 50% of daily travels. So very briefly, and as a history of the development of the city, Mexico City is a 13th century city, but we are going to start in the 1900. You can see the shape of the city. The gray shape is Mexico City as known. The other part around to the north, to the east, and to the west is the state of Mexico City. Obviously, this is an urban development between the time. The development between the 30s and the 60s were from 1 million to 5 million. You can see it very graphically in the image. In the 80s, we got a very big trouble since the 70s, and we grow to almost 13 million people in the whole surroundings. So, in the changing of the century, we got almost 18 million people. Now this problem is a stop in the city. The city is not growing anymore in population, but it's growing in problems, and it's growing in other cases I'm going to show it to you. So maybe the curve, it's a negative curve for these population inhabitants. So by 2005, we were almost 19 million, but the counting for this year, it's about the same 19 million, but almost 9 million are residents in the whole center. The other 10 million are from suburban places. So this scheme shows you very well what is the big problem today, and next I'm going to show you how we're going to tackle it. Cooperative area, the corporations are going to the west, the richest part of the city, as many of the cities you know, and east is a poorer part. Industry used to be in the center, but Mexico City has been into 3 very big crises in the last decades. The first one was the earthquake in 1985, when too many too many spaces were left void. So we have so many voids we are refilling today. That's the only situation in Mexico City when you can get void. It's different to the American cities. So now we have these spaces open. The second crisis was the environmental crisis, the air, the contaminated air, by the 90s. And you know the last H1N1 crisis also. So we've been learning from this crisis. But in the environmental crisis in the 90s, the industrial sections were growing to the north, and they were left in some spaces in the center of the city. So now we're going to use it to take back the people to that places. The people, they are already in the city. Those 5 million people they are coming, they are traveling. We are thinking that it's a better way to live near to the centers of the work, less transportation. They are still being in lower hours in the city, so they use the city. We have to transport, give water, etc. to that people. So in the new urban development plan, we are trying to get all these yellow parts around the city, most of them that are paying taxes also to other governments, but using the city, we are trying to get them back. So this kind of strip, the industrial area, is going to the north, but it's still being most of it inside of the city. So we are working in 3 actions, really. There are many axes of the urban development plan, but I'm going to talk you just one of them in the perspective view of the public space. We are working in 3 levels. I'm going to be focused on the two first, the city level and street level. The first one we started 8 years ago with the rescuing of the Reforma Avenue. Everyone who knows Mexico City knows that there's a very important avenue, a boulevard, as the Champs-Élysées in Paris or Barcelona, Calzada de Gracia. It's a very big, a very important street in the city, but by the decades were left like this one. So we got a 19th century boulevard, but what left, so all the investment, all the real estate developing were to the west, as you saw it in the last images. So what we really try to do is to improve these spaces. This is a new Reforma Avenue, the pedestrian facilities improvement, to make a more livable city, a more secure. And also what happened is that the real estate developing return to that places, and also we are getting a very better packed city, high density city. So we got this kind of facilities. You can see how pedestrian is one of our axes. We are going to fight cars against cars, and now we have transformed all the policies and all the there's a new code for pedestrian that cars should take care, very strong. So this is, I'm going to be very quickly. So life returned to that kind of those places. Pedestrian took the city. This is the Reforma Avenue. You know, this is Chapultepec Park, a very big green area in the city. And this is the center of the town. This is the center of the city, the Zócalo, the main square. So Reforma Avenue is all over connecting the city. The dots you saw it, and the section below talks about how in the last 8 years it's going to be growing, it's going to be filling. This is in process, and this is the projection for the 2012. So it's going to be filled, there's no more reserved territory, and we're thinking, those are images of, it's not a very high city because, you know, we have a not very good soil ground, and we have very, it's inapplicable like this, like here, so we can't go that tall, but we're doing our best, and it's greenery. We are asking to the designer, for example, for this hall, for the entrances, to be a portico, to be a kind of arcade, or something like a promenade for the buildings, to make this kind of private, public. We don't have it in Mexico City. Mexico City is more like an European city, well packed, so we don't have this conception of the public. And we were talking this morning about about the views in the city here, for example. There's open space, not public space, but open space. You can look at it. You can maybe go into, but that doesn't happen in Mexico City. Well, I'm going to be quickly. This is another example, the Plaza de la República. La República's plaza, are very old, are very important. It's connected to the center of the city by only 2 kilometers. It's almost the same size, and we wanted to take it to finish as a very good, an emblematic civic culture space. Obviously, with a plan, with a mixture between parking not over the surface but on the ground. We don't want cars all over the surface. We don't want to see parked cars. We want to bury them. Then public transport, cycling and safe walking. So we are working on that. This work is already on. Sorry. We would like to have this kind of quality of city. The next one is the street level. The street level is not less important, but is obviously in a minor scale. It's connecting. We have a very nice network of pedestrian streets. The blue lines you saw in the picture are already pedestrian streets, but they are just pieces of lost space in the center. We were winning to many forces, economical forces, informal commerce, etc., to go to this stage, to this kind of public life, public spaces, more secure for sure, more eyes over the space, obviously it's more secure. And this is our most important project. 14 minutes, right? I got it. This is Madera Street, and it's connecting the center, the core of the city to the Beaux-Arts Palace. So we want to make also, this is with cars, this is with pedestrians, this is with cars, this is with pedestrians. And pedestrians prefer to walk. We also have a problem of public health in Mexico, you know it, you know very well. So we want the people to walk, to go to the streets, to walk, to leave the car. I'm going to be very quickly. This is a cleaning program, changing, giving certainty to the pedestrian. So it's changing the public space. But I want to show you this one. This is a campaign we already start to better the relation between the cars and the people. We want the people to go to the streets to walk. This is a mayor's action, but really the mayor is going out to the streets to improve this kind of changes. So every corner, every cross-section, every sidewalk is improved. We have art in the city to educate, but also the improvement of the public space gives, as a result, civic culture that we are winning, and this is a very nice condition in the city that we know that in a very short time we're going to have a better city. And this is the last, just 20 seconds. The model shift you were seeing in other cities, we already have it. That is the metro situation. We have a very big network of metro. Now we're introducing 40 kilometers of VRT system, this metro bus, the red one in the middle, and the electric bus also. So we want these cars. Maybe we are not really conscious about it, but we want cars that really are this kind of person. Also, they are one by one, to pack them and and then to take into the So it's a very cheap condition to make the people remember the problems of in the beginning. I show you to be the people conscious about quality, about security, about health, about everything. We are winning. We are really winning, as many other cities in Latin America. We are winning the problems with the quality of public space, with the quality of public money goes to public transport, not to cars. This is very important. This is a policy of the new measure in Mexico City. Public money goes to public infrastructure. 2009, we have 1% of people biking. We wanted 5%, and we already installed also our system of public bikes in Mexico City. Thank you very much.
My name is Gail Goldberg. I'm your planning director, representing your city. My goal tonight is to keep Scott in his chair. So I'm going to forego a PowerPoint and very briefly talk to you just a little bit about the unique history of the city of Los Angeles, sort of where we are now and where we need to go in the next few years. We do not have 700 years of tradition that we have to build on in the city of Los Angeles. We are in many ways a city who should never have been. This was not a city that was formed around some great natural resource like a port or a river. In fact, the only thing we had going for us in the early formation of this city was a temperate climate, a lot of vacant land, and the thing that really made it go in Los Angeles was very entrepreneurial land speculators and a very active chamber of commerce who sold this city in ways that few other cities could ever boast. This is a city that was sold by boosters who enticed Midwesterners to get on a train and come to California to sort of an uncity. And land developers who came to this city bought large swaths of land and built unique individual communities that were low density with a lot of space and enticed a lot of people to come here. And it was not until all of those individual developments started brushing up against one another that Bill Fulton says we reluctantly became a metropolis. So here we are, and this has resulted in a very unique development pattern in Los Angeles that has presented us with unique problems and has not allowed us to use models that are typical of other cities to solve our problems. We are a city that could best be described as dense sprawl. We are a city where in our most dense centers, we are much less dense than the dense centers of most American cities. And in our lower density surrounding areas, we are much higher in density. And this presents some very specific problems when one is trying to create a transportation system that would typically be connected to those dense centers and give people a lot of options to get the places they need to go. So this dense sprawl has created specific problems for us in developing a really viable transportation system. So where are we today? I like to say we're a big city, but in this company, I'm a little embarrassed. But we are, as an American city, a pretty big city. We're 4 million people, and we're more than 470 square miles, and by American standards, that's pretty big. And we're a city that has been, in many ways, just a growth machine. Our biggest industry is probably how we have grown in this city. But we have now reached the point where we have 4 million people, and we have a transportation or a transit system that only minimally helps people get around in this city. And as someone mentioned to you before, we do love our cars. But our cars are better than anybody else's cars. Yes. Our cars have TV sets in the back seat so that our children can watch a movie on the way to school in the morning. Our children have refrigerators in the back seat where at least 2 meals can be served on a normal commute. And we need those cars. We need them desperately in this city. We are also a city that has not evolved with a lot of very sophisticated planning, certainly not comprehensive planning that has brought everything together in any kind of credible way. This is a city that's been planned in the past sort of subdivision by subdivision, and even currently is often planned project by project. And while we often get wonderful projects, we sometimes don't get wonderful communities or neighborhoods. And so some of the challenges that we are faced with today are how do we take this city, this reluctant metropolis, and really engage our neighborhoods and our communities, because another peculiar aspect of American planning is that it's so much fun that everybody wants to do it. So everyone, we have our city objectives in terms of our long-range plans for the city, and certainly in Los Angeles we have a smart growth plan that says we are going to accommodate our growth by putting our new development around transit stations, along transportation corridors, because these wonderful cars we have just about filled up every parking lot we have, and certainly have filled up all the streets. And so we need very quickly to come up with a strategy in this city that will allow us to redevelop our city in ways that will allow people to have a life without being in the car quite as much as they are now. And while we're not going to take the car away from you, I think that it is safe to say that while we know we are going to grow in the next 20 years, we expect at least another 1 million people in our city. The other thing we know is that we cannot accommodate the 685,000 cars that 1 million people by today's ownership rates would necessarily bring. So the challenge in this city is to, at a community level, sort of neighborhood by neighborhood, take these citywide policies and convince communities that they can grow in a way that will really improve their current quality of life. And one of the unique things about the American citizens is, well, this may be true other places, they don't trust government a lot. I don't know if your citizens trust you more, but ours don't trust us a lot. And they certainly don't like us telling them what we want to do with their neighborhoods. They are very convinced that they have their own vision and they want to protect their neighborhood values. And so you cannot plan in this city without really engaging the public. And so convincing them that we can grow in a way that will allow them to leverage that growth, to leverage those infrastructure investments into amenities that can improve their neighborhoods and make their quality of life better. And that's the challenge that we are facing in Los Angeles. We are currently working on 12 of the 35 community plans in this city in order to create those kinds of plans that have a shared vision. Both the city and the neighborhoods share a vision for those neighborhoods. We have instituted in the planning department an urban design studio so that we spend a lot more time now thinking about the public environment, the walkability, how do we accommodate bicycles. Right now, if you have a bicycle in LA, the most likely thing is you will disappear into a pothole, or you will be used as target practice by cars because they're bored out there on the roads. So we are looking at trying to create a better public environment. We are looking to really recreate our commercial corridors to capture opportunities to create main streets that allow neighborhoods to have neighborhood-serving uses so that people can walk and get some of their daily needs taken care of, and hopefully with the expansion of our transit system, because some folks in LA have gotten so disgusted that they really are willing to pay to expand our transportation system. So we have Proposition R that gave us all a new sales tax. And by the way, the city really needs the sales tax, and when you reminded me that we made money on the Olympics, I'm thinking we may try it again, because we're desperate. But in any case, I think one of the big challenges in this city, and one of the charges that the mayor gave to me, was to create a public dialogue around planning, to get people excited about what planning could do, to get people excited about the possibilities for the future. And the one thing that we continue to have in this city that I think is unique and is historical is that we have a very dynamic and a very exciting citizenry, and we have an entrepreneurial spirit in this city that I believe will allow things to happen that cannot happen in other cities. And so I see the future of this great city as a very, very exciting and prosperous. We're continuing to grow even in the worst economy. And that's the goal that we have for planning in Los Angeles. And I'm going to now let us go ahead with a conversation. And thank you all for being here with us tonight.
Okay, thank you very much for all this. Two of your very famous professors made a couple, I think, of very, very important statements. Qingyun was famous several years ago for saying, there is no public space in China, which is an interesting point. And Manuel Castells from the Annenberg Center has written a lot about public goods in the past. And I think that everybody is in some way addressing perhaps new kinds of and different kinds of public space and the possibility and the problems of what kind of public goods do we need and do we want in kind of a city that's to come, and under conditions of no public money. And I don't think it's not just LA and it's not just Britain where our whole country is in fiscal crisis, but even in China nobody wants to pay any more tax. You know, people think they're taxed quite enough. How do you get growth? How do you get public goods? How do you get public amenities without any more public money? So let's put this kind of question perhaps, and how do you use land? How do you use land? You know, we're talking about different forms of movement through the city, but land use, property developers, speculators, public use and other uses of land. How do you incorporate and encourage uses of land in this sort of direction? So perhaps the best thing we can do, I think, is should we start with a couple of questions from the audience, and then kind of go back to our panel for everybody to make some statements. I'm looking out there. You've got a point to make here in the front, right? Do you want a mic here?
Hey, sure. I guess just on your thing you're just asking about there. Oh, you say that no public money for public buildings, but in a lot of these slides and stuff, there are a lot of really shiny public-looking buildings, and so they must be getting public money for them somehow. So, can we have a discussion on that?
I think that's a really important point. I mean, I think very quickly that what's also very interesting is that kind of historically the crisis, as it were, of the old Keynesian sort of welfare state, right, that we had some 20, 30 years ago, We're now looking for new kinds of publics. The question is, how can we form these on a more local level for them to be more responsible to citizens? I think Paul Krugman, who won the Nobel Prize just a couple of years ago, was talking about kind of regional and local kind of economies of scale. But you just put the point from the audience about public buildings. I wonder if there's anybody else who's got some points on this. Right.
We're adding a lane to 405. It's like, isn't that like $1 billion? So how does it get it seems like in the U.S. in particular, when we do international issues, when we pay for highway improvement, it's like a noble thing and broader. When we fund transit, sort of transit subsidy, sort of has this kind of welfare connotation. So isn't there significant money spent, but does the line what people's priorities really are?
Should we go back to the panelists who got some more points? Just make them. Gail first, yeah.
Yeah, I love the comments about how quick we are to spend money to expand the highway. Well, in Los Angeles, most of the folks believe that the expansion of the highway is for them. It's personal. It's going to make my life better. The expansion of our public transportation system is for those other people that I'm trying to get off of my highway. It's for you others. And one of the challenges in Los Angeles is to create a public transit system that is not for the others, but is a choice made by people who could afford to drive, but choose not to, because the public transportation system is a better option. And that's a real challenge, and it's a mind shift for people who are Angelinos who are sort of wedded to their cars. But it's a place we have to go.
Okay. Earlier today, Richard was saying something very true about we cannot implement a plan, the identical plan for any other city. We have to make each city, we have to look for research for each city plan. At least in the Mexico City's case, we have a very, it's not the same as here. In Mexico City, you saw it, we have 3.5 million cars, but we have 20 million people in the city. So there are at least 16.5 million without a car. So we need to focus on that. And we were focusing, like here, doing infrastructure for cars. So we were seeing that the quality of life in the people of Mexico City was going down. Now we have to rescue it, just focusing and just developing transportation, public high-quality transportation. It's a hard situation. But the other question about the public money and other thing is that we are doing also a scheme, a financial scheme for the Mexico City as it works. We are doing since the last 6 years strategies to join the private with the public. But the Reforma Avenue I show you, for example, is the investment of the public money in the public space, and was a risk by that time, 2002, 2004. But these days, the corporative buildings, they are growing, they are building in the center of the town again. So everything is improving. We spend money, public money in the public space for much better quality, and we just wait to the investment, to the real estate developers to come. They already back. They already near to the center, to this pack, to this high density city. We all, at least in most of the world, we want. We don't want anymore this sprawl. We don't want anymore this situation. And then the second stage of this phase is to join private and public inversions, doing responsible to the private. The private now in Mexico City that wants to build a building, the ones I show you maybe, is not limited to the land. It has to give something to the city. So it has to be a bridge, has to improve public space around it, maybe parking lot for public parking lots, etc. So we are trying to make people conscious of the city is for everyone.
I would like to follow Dennis, because we are developing cities. There are many good cities before us, like Los Angeles. So how should we develop? Well, we have calculated many times. If we encourage Shanghai people, like Los Angeles, everybody has cars, and everybody has a house, then we need 10 times. The 10 times of land is not enough. So the only way is to try to make a compact city. And compact city means the density is a compact city means density is very high. But it also means you lose the private yards. You cannot drive your private cars. So how do we do? So two of the most important things is one, public space, one, public transportation. Public space means you cannot have your private gardens, private yards, but you have more public parks. You cannot drive your private cars, but you can have the better public transportations. So that's why we took so much attention to build our subway system. Now, we try to plan more than 1,000 kilometers subways. Now it's finished half of it already. And of course, the government as well as the society encourage people to buy the private cars because the cars is a very important economy engine to improve the economic growth. But we will very often to have a joke. We said we encourage people to buy cars, but don't encourage them to use. That means it's impossible for us to drive cars by everybody. Consider about the Chinese population. We have we have 1 billion more than the American population. And we have a thinner size of the land. And now we have only maybe 1 or 2% of the people have a car. How do we imagine how much 60% have the car?
But everybody's online, and almost everybody's getting online.
The whole country will be in a parking.
Yeah. No, what's interesting is you've got an amazingly high level of communications.
Yes.
Broadband, television, satellite.
Yes.
Very good infrastructure there too.
So what the most important consideration of us of the Panelist
for a mega project, government must come up with the money, and the one thing that is the variable is cost. So we have central government by, I'm trying to think of a polite way of describing it, in a tight hold to achieve those investments. In terms of other significant public investments in London at the moment, I have to say that most of those have been committed in the good days, and we do have a significant problem in the recession at the moment, particularly in terms of new house building. The central government is cutting back on public expenditure and therefore cutting back on its grant to public housing development at the same time as the private sector is finding it very difficult to raise revenues because the banks are being difficult, despite the fact that we the public in England actually own half the banks now. They're still not doing what we tell them. So we have a problem at the moment, but the thing to do is to manage the current crisis and still plan for the future, and that's how we go forward with our planning process.
Gentlemen, the first row.
Yes, I wanted to say I'm a native Angelino, and I'm not wedded to my car. However, we have such an antiquated bus system. It's embarrassing. I mean, I was in London last year, and I guess because of a combination of dedicated lines, whatever, I was able to get around London very easily. And when I got to a bus stop, all I had to do was look up and it said the bus was coming like in 5 minutes. When I get out of this corner, if I was to go back to Santa Monica tonight, when I got up to the bus stop, I wouldn't know whether that bus was going to take 45 minutes or an hour and a half. And it's embarrassing to live in a city where we pay plenty of taxes, and like on the west side, you can't get from West LA to Century City, which is maybe 3 miles, in an hour at 5 o'clock at night. And I don't know why. I went to Berlin and Vienna, and the same thing. The bus transportations are world class, and we're a world class city. And we have an antiquated system that I have to be in my car.
Well, and that was the point that I was making earlier, that we have to have a system that appeals to all of us, and that is, technologically the same as other cities have, as advanced, as modern. Right. One of the problems in this city has been that for a long time now, I've been here 4 years, so I am told by people who live here and by planners that there was a lot of resistance in years past to really incorporating into the West Side any kind of a sophisticated transportation system. That there was a great resistance, and that it has only been recently that I think it has become desperate enough for people that people are now open to the idea of a better transportation system.
In the 1940s, they took away the little red trolley.
Absolutely, yeah.
They took it away, the big corporations.
Exactly, the highways.
And they took it away. And so, I mean, there's a history of LA wanting to be on public transportation.
Right. No, I think you're absolutely correct.
Another point from gentleman in the front row.
Hello. I'm going to make this very quick questions. It's fascinating having this group of individuals from across the globe. And I want to start out with just the question in London of the congestion fee. I've heard that several diplomats or embassies are not paying in congestion fee. It's causing some problem with the model for other European countries that want to emulate it, specifically Berlin and Paris, which is something I was surprised to hear. I want to know about in Shanghai, about the creation of the project by Arab, which was supposed to be the eco-friendly village for the 2010 Expo, which now I hear it's not completed because of expenditure rising and all that. And in Mexico City, I understand that after the epidemic that occurred, now Mexico City might be hosting the COP16, which would be something very tremendous, but at the same time would be a great drain on its resources. And last to LA, which is, I understand that in California, we have something called ABSB 32375, which is supposed to unite Californian cities with the Kyoto or carbon emissions lowering to smart growth. I'm wondering if the Urban Land Institute, which I think you're a part of, has promoted a lot of infrastructural growth and all that. And I'm wondering if ULEI has any future positions as to how to move California in that direction of smart growth, public transportation, that might be able to be copied in other regions of the world. So.
If I understood your question correctly, the congestion charge has in effect prevented expansion of car movement in the centre of London. What it hasn't done, because we seem to be addicted to our cars even in London, it hasn't actually created a reduction. But what that means in effect is that London's growth has been managed in the centre by the congestion charge. Now we have options. The options are, do we want to raise the charge even further to reduce further the use of cars? And I think we're coming to the view that actually what we need to do is use the money to significantly improve the public transport system, to actually make it more carrot than stick into the future. So I don't envisage that we'll be seeing significant rises in the cost, but what we need to do is to make public transport that bit more attractive. And I recognise what the gentleman said over there in terms of the quality of public transport, but it still needs to improve. We still have ways and means that we can move things on. I mean, our underground system, the subway, is still Victorian in many places and creaking. We have further work to do on that. So I would any other city who are contemplating congestion charge should carry on contemplating congestion charge and think about introducing it as soon as they can.
I understand your question is about the expo this year. Yes, it's almost completed, but we suppose the expo itself is not the regeneration of the city, but it's a very good chance for us to reuse the land, because this time it's very different thing of the expo is we select the site right in the center of the city, but it's a former industrial area. So the expo is a chance for us to replace the industry and reuse the land as a new active public commercial area in the city. So that's what the expo will give us.
Shoot, lady in the
In Deepak's introduction, he said something that I thought was really interesting, and I'm probably going to butcher it, but that a bacteria in one organism might become an antibacteria in another, and that a stone from one mountain becomes a jade in another, and sort of to the effect that one thing that works somewhere may not work in another place. And can you all speak on an underlying force or theory that each city has in its planning, and whether or not it's something that can be implemented in other cities?
Well, I can certainly share with you that I believe that LA, not only because of its development pattern, offers unique challenges that require unique solutions, but this is a city that is sort of the creative capital of the world. This is a city that has the brain power, the creative resource here to, I think, come up with very unique solutions. And one of the great things about this city is that anyone who comes up with a great idea, I can find a neighborhood in Los Angeles or a community that's willing to try it. They really are, they are open to new ideas, maybe not citywide, but in terms of pilot projects and trying things, this is a city that is extremely open to doing that. And that's one of the things that we're working really hard on with the universities and with other folks, to take some of the ideas and actually go out and implement them in a neighborhood so that we can learn from them and find replicable things that can solve citywide problems. I want to just quickly address that we had a question over here around sustainability and around climate change. The state of California, through AB 32, adopted a bill that addresses climate change throughout the state. And then SB 375 is the bill that connects land use to climate change. And the planning department has an entire section devoted to sustainability, and we are working very closely with the Regional Technical Advisory Committee that has been set up by SB 375 to figure out how it is that we create a baseline for emissions in this city, and how it is, well, and it's beyond the city, it's a regional effort with this Regional Technical Advisory Committee, but how it is that we're going to measure improvements. And the land use plans that we're promoting in the city of Los Angeles are all plans that reduce auto dependency. So this is a major issue in our city.
My question deals more specifically with Los Angeles than the others, but it specifically has to do with geography of Los Angeles. Most of these other cities have a much more circular shape, and the geography of Los Angeles is very not circular at all. And so I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about how working with other municipalities plays a role in the future development of Los Angeles, especially as it relates to transportation.
Well, I think you've hit upon a challenge in this city, because a lot of the solutions that we need to come up with cannot be created city by city. They are regional problems and they require regional solutions, and this is a region that has a lot of cities beyond Los Angeles. There's not an infrastructure set up in this region that really promotes that kind of interaction between jurisdictions, and it happens in this city sort of on an ad hoc basis, so that when we are engaging in a project, for instance, or in some sort of regional infrastructure, we have to actually go out and really bring the people to the table. A lot of that happens through SCAG, who does, and I think a challenge for US cities is how are we going to solve those regional problems, because there is a huge sort of sense in the United States of local property control and local land use control, and we guard it jealously, and it really gets in the way of our solving regional problems through some regional agencies that have any degree of power.
I'm watching you.
Thank you all for amazing talk. I have one question, and then probably as the host, I'll do a request from each one of you. We all know globalism is somewhat of a collaboration and integration of differences throughout the world. But we rarely were told that globalism is also a war. War in many other forms, not in the kind of sheer exhibition of force or armed force. So in that sense, each city must build its competitiveness in the shrinking world market, both socially and commercially. So I wonder, each one of you, in the dealings of your city, have you consciously built up the competitiveness, but particularly in relation to other cities that's actually brought here? You probably noticed their whole axis, right? There's LA, Mexico City, London, Shanghai. There's intention behind this axis. I wondered, is that competitiveness is something you consciously address but rarely exposed to the general public in other cities? The demand is, if you would choose one sentence to be told to your mayor, obviously mayor has a lot to do with the city, maybe less here, but in many other cities the mayor is. But what would you tell your mayor?
I think I have to watch Shanghai very closely. What would I say to my mayor? I think I can't do it in one sentence. We are very conscious of London's ranking as a global city, and very keen to work on the areas where London ranks lower than other cities. And in terms of various ones that have come out, particularly quality of life and quality of environment are two where London does not rank as highly as it ought to. And while we may regard ourselves as globally competitive, particularly in finance and business services and cultural industries and the like, none of those matter if London's quality of life slips further and is perceived as unattractive. So my advice to my mayor would be, above all else, you must concentrate on improving quality of life and the strands that make that up.
Okay, so, I have been working for the Metropolitan City government for many years. I was always talking with our mayor. And, China is a central power country, and the mayor is very powerful. And I always told him, it's good, because you can use this power to do what many of the other states cannot do. But also, be careful. Give as more as possible consideration to the public. This public in China more means the lower level, lower income mass.
Do you listen to you?
Normally, yes.
Well, first I would like to go to the last question here about emergencies and epidemic and everything. I think we are living in a crisis. In Mexico City, I told you about the 3 crises we crossed. But we are living in a worldwide crisis now, and maybe in the crisis is the time to be brave and to take a risk. And we should think to do the things just in this time. I'm not gonna say to you about what I'm gonna tell to my mayor. Maybe I'm gonna tell you what I hear from my mayor every day, and it's we start to think in collective, in the people. If we think more, the more we think in collectiveness and less in the private and less in the particular, the more we are going to win for all. That's maybe one of the sentences. And we have to change also to repair and to rethink about luxury. What's luxury in life? What's quality of life? It's that car with TVs and with everything luxury. There is a Spanish thinker that says luxury was to have a car. To have a car was luxury in the 19th century and in the 20th century, in the beginning. Now, to be in a city without a car, that's luxury, maybe.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you what I've been telling our mayor for 4 years, and what I tell audiences when they ask me what's the biggest problem in Los Angeles, and I say, it's not traffic, it's not affordable housing. I think the biggest problem we have in this city is jobs. This is a city that has grown over the last 30 years by 1 million people, and in that same time, we have lost in sheer numbers 50,000 jobs, and we are losing more jobs every year. And we are a poor city. This is a city where the area median income is less than $50,000 for a family of 4. We need to concentrate in this city on a real economic prosperity strategy that planning and every other department in the city should engage in to help educate our population and create jobs, good middle-class jobs that will give people a reasonable quality of life. And this is a huge challenge in this city.
One mayor of Shanghai in prison. 3 governors, I'm from Illinois originally, 3 governors of Illinois probably going to prison. I don't know what I told to my boss. Ma Qingyun, can you give us a last word?
Yes, well, first of all, I wanted to actually thank all our panelists again for a wonderful speech and very intense dialogue. I also want to encourage our audience, watch out for other Vision and Voices activities on campus, and particularly when I forgot to introduce myself. I'm the Dean of School of Architecture. I also encourage you to pay attention to what's going on in the school. We have many exciting activities, including the new kind of urban agenda and digital intelligence in how design can influence city in a new ways. So once again, let's give a big round of applause. What would they give words to their mayor? In fact, in my mind, I thought they're going to recommend each other to their mayors as the planning commissioner. In other words, Shanghai may have Richard, and Mexico City may have Gail, and LA may have Daniel. That might be an experiment we can all fanciful, because in other fields of studies, decontextualization and deplacement is actually a necessary step for experiment on pure ideas. But somehow in urban culture it's never happened. Maybe that's an area. Maybe when that happens, we'll invite them again and talk to the other cities in some other way. Thank you.